The wind howled over the barren hills of Darrow's field, a forsaken stretch of land surrounded by myths, half-buried bones, and warnings whispered by the old folk, but none of that mattered to the Henderson excavation crew. Money had been promised, and they were behind schedule. Their contract with the government was clear: dig, catalog, and clear the area for future development. The team's base camp, a cluster of trailers and tents, sat at the edge of a gaping trench. It was here that they had begun drilling into what appeared to be a collapsed cave system beneath the chalky soil. For 3 weeks they found nothing but shards of pottery, the occasional animal skeleton, and strange soil layers that smelled faintly metallic. It wasn't enough to justify the funding. Not yet. "Another bust," muttered Owen, the site's lead archaeologist, tossing a fragment of shale into the wheelbarrow. "We're not going to find anything ancient here. It's all just mud and rocks." Then, on the 23rd day, the drill jammed. The workers gathered around, confused. The machinery hadn't had issues before. The bit was stuck, but not on stone or metal, on something hollow. Owen called for a manual dig. By noon, they uncovered a smooth, dark surface, flat and cold to the touch, despite the summer heat. It was unlike any rock they'd seen. "It's carved," said Amelia, the team geologist. "But this isn't limestone or granite. This feels like obsidian, but matte. Artificial." That night, under the floodlights, the team unearthed more. A perfect square panel, embedded deep in the earth, with spiral patterns etched across its face. There was a faint humming sound when you stood too close, subtle, but undeniable. Owen decided not to report it to the surveyors. Not yet. They worked through the night, brushing away centuries of packed soil, until an entire door-like structure emerged. No hinges, no handle, just symbols, alien in shape and language, burned deep into the material. And the humming grew. "Louder? Maybe it's a tomb," whispered Amelia, unable to hide her awe. Or ... a vault? Owen looked over the patterns. It didn't match any known script. Not Egyptian, not Sumerian, not even the obscure Aztec variants he had seen in his PhD research. They set up camp closer to the dig site. That was their first mistake. The night it opened at 3:11 a.m., the wind suddenly died. The air grew thick, like breathing through wet cotton. The camp's lights flickered. One of the interns, Jacob, stumbled out of his tent and vomited in the dirt, saying he had a dream of being buried alive. Owen was awake. He was staring at the panel. It was glowing. Soft crimson pulse lit the spirals like veins. The humming turned rhythmic like a heartbeat. Then, before anyone could react, the panel slid open, not with a mechanical whir, but with a sound like whispering voices behind stone walls. A staircase descended into pitch blackness. Owen called for lights. Amelia brought the thermal scanner. What they saw chilled their blood. The temperature dropped 20 degrees near the entrance. The scanner showed no heat signatures inside, but the walls, though made of the same dark material, seemed to vibrate, not physically, but energetically, as if they were reacting to presence. "We should wait," Amelia said, her voice tight. "This doesn't feel ... human." But Owen was already stepping inside. First Descent 5 members descended into the chamber. Owen, Amelia, Jacob, and 2 workers, Reed and Elia. The stairs were narrow and steep, the walls covered in more spirals. More symbols, some appearing to shift when not directly observed. About 100 feet in, the passage opened into a dome-like room, and in the center floated a black cube. It didn't rest on a pedestal, it didn't hang from the ceiling, it simply hovered, humming in sync with their own racing hearts. Each face of the cube bore markings, eyes, or perhaps symbols shaped like eyes that seemed to follow whoever stared too long. Amelia took a single step forward. The humming stopped. The silence was brutal. Then Jacob screamed, not in pain, but in pure terror. He collapsed, convulsing, eyes rolling back. They carried him out as fast as they could. Once outside, Jacob stopped shaking, but something had changed. He wouldn't speak. Just kept staring at the door, whispering one word again, and again listening. Later that day, Owen ordered the chamber sealed. He radioed the authorities, gave them the cleaned-up version, possible ancient tomb. Unstable structure, needing further analysis, but he knew they had found something older than history. That evening, Amelia reviewed the footage from the helmet cameras. Something strange caught her eye. A brief flicker in the cubes, surface less a reflection, more a distortion. Like a face pressing against fabric from the inside. Then the audio glitched. A voice low and cold spoke a single phrase in a language that none of their translators recognized. She played it again. This time, her nose began to bleed. She turned it off. That night, Jacob vanished from his cot. His tent was torn from the inside, but there were no footprints leading away. Just a spiral burned into the dirt where his sleeping bag had been. Owen didn't sleep. He stood outside the chamber until dawn, the wind having returned, whipping sand into his eyes. He wasn't sure what terrified him more, what they'd uncovered, or the realization that it had been the morning after Jacob vanished. The camp was no longer the same. No one wanted to say it aloud, but every member of the Henderson crew felt it. A pressure in the air. It's like static before a lightning strike, or the silence before something speaks your name. The birds were gone. Even the insects seemed to have abandoned the field. Amelia hadn't told anyone what the footage did to her nose. She couldn't explain it anyway, not scientifically. She told herself it was stress. But the image of that face, pushing against the cube's surface, lingered in her thoughts like a parasite. Owen was already at the trench, staring down into the stairwell with dark circles under his eyes. He hadn't slept. Ilya brought him coffee. He didn't touch it. "We're not alone out here," Owen said quietly. Ilya hesitated. "You mean someone else is watching us?" "No, I mean, we woke something up." The mark Jacob wasn't the only one with a spiral. Ilya found it first on her lower back. A faint mark in the skin, like a birthmark, but warmer to the touch, pulsing faintly. When she mentioned it, 3 other crew members checked their own skin. All had it, same shape, same location. Amelia tried to scan it. Her instruments went haywire. A digital thermometer cracked. Her laptop screen flickered and froze when she pulled the image from her camera. Owen stood over her shoulder. "Don't show anyone else," he said. "Why not?" "Because it's spreading." She didn't understand until that evening when one of the new workers, a man named Brantley, collapsed during dinner, clutching his head and screaming. When they pulled up his shirt, the spiral was there much larger. Stretching across his back like it had grown, they kept him sedated. But even unconscious, he whispered in that same unfamiliar language. It was the same phrase they had heard on the audio. Amelia. Looked it up in every language library she could find. It didn't match anything but the symbols on the door. They were starting to look familiar. She could almost read them now. Government Interference 3, black SUVs arrived by dusk. No logos, no license plates. Just tinted windows and silent agents with no names. Owen greeted them with forced politeness. The leader, a man with ash-colored hair and eyes that never blinked, introduced himself only as Agent Crow. "We've been monitoring seismic anomalies in this region," Crow said flatly. "Your dig site has activated something beneath the crust. We are assuming control of this location immediately." Owen didn't argue. He didn't have the energy. "What is it?" Amelia asked. "What's under there?" Crow looked at her, and for a moment, just a flicker, his composure cracked. "I don't think it's from this earth," he said, "but it's very old. Older than bones. Older than language. You should leave before it sees you too clearly." Crow didn't answer. The descent team, the agents brought gear the crew had never seen: scanners with moving symbols instead of numbers, visors that glowed pale blue, and drones that didn't make a sound. They went down into the chamber at midnight. 6 of them. The crew wasn't allowed to watch. At 1:47 a.m., the drone stopped transmitting. At 2:03 a.m., a single agent came back up. His visor was gone. His eyes were completely black. No whites, no iris, just endless dark. He dropped to his knees and whispered one sentence over and over. The cube remembers the blood. Crow shot him in the head. No hesitation, no explanation. He turned to the crew and said, "Seal the chamber now." But the door wouldn't close. The whispers that night, everyone heard them. Not out loud in their minds, like dreams leaking through. Cracks in their skulls, whispers in that same unplaceable language. Symbols spinning behind closed eyelids. Images of spirals and walls, on skin, on mountains, under oceans. Amelia woke with blood dripping from her ears. Owen found her in the trailer, shaking, muttering about the second door. "What second door?" he asked. She pointed to the diagram she had drawn in her sleep. It was almost perfect a rendering of the spiral patterns on the cube's base. But there was more. A staircase beneath the cube. "There's another way." "Down," she said, eyes wide. "Another chamber." "It showed me." "Amelia," Owen said carefully, "you haven't been down there since the first night." "I don't need to," she whispered. "It's in all of us now." They dug too far that morning. The spiral marks grew darker. Hot to the touch. Some of the crew started forgetting their own names. One man Rufik dug into his own skin with a broken shard of mirror, trying to get the spiral out. He didn't survive. Crow wasn't seen again. His tent was found empty, his weapons and gear left untouched. The ground beneath his cot was soft, freshly disturbed. When they dug, they found a perfect, polished stone slab with spiral engravings. Just like the first panel. Amelia looked at it, trembling. "It's spreading," she said. Owen finally made the call. They were leaving. They packed up. They sealed the stairwell with what they could. And they drove. Fast. No one spoke. But 40 miles out, the lead truck lost control. The tires melted. The driver's eyes turned solid black. He smiled and whispered something in the spiral tongue before he died. The symbol was burned into the dashboard. Something followed that night. Back at the nearest town, Amelia caught Owen staring at the stars. "What are you looking for?" she asked. "I think it's awake now. The cube." He nodded. "No, not just the cube. Whatever it called." She shivered. "Do you think it was sealed for a reason?" "Yes," he said. "And I think we just opened its prison. Or maybe worse, we answered its signal." Amelia turned to look back toward the dig site, now just a memory on the horizon. There was a faint red glow in the sky above it, like a pulse, like something breathing beneath the earth. They left Darrow's field getting brighter, but it did not leave them. 3 days after fleeing the site, Owen sat alone in a motel room 200 kilometers away, watching static dance across the TV screen. No channels worked, just noise. But every few minutes, a symbol flickered across the black and white fuzz, too fast to register, but enough to make his chest ache. It was the spiral, the same one branded into Jacob's sleeping bag, the same one that bled across Brantley's skin, the one he sometimes saw in his reflection, swirling faintly in his pupils when he stared long enough. He hadn't told Amelia. She was sleeping in the room next door, or at least she had been. Now, someone was knocking. A slow, steady rhythm. 3 knocks. A pause. 3 more. He opened the door. No one was there. Just a single. Flat stone lying on the welcome mat, polished, etched. The spiral, the disappearance begins. They lost contact with 4 of the crew that same day. Their phones went dead.
Oh.
GPS trackers stuck on a single location, a stretch of desert road that hadn't existed on any map.
Oh.
When the police were dispatched, the vehicle was found intact, but empty. No signs of struggle, no footprints, just seats. With residual heat, as if the passengers had vanished seconds before, there was a message written across the inside of the windshield. "In dust, it remembers." By nightfall, the town where they'd all taken refuge experienced a blackout. People began to dream in spirals. Some screamed in their sleep. One elderly man in a nearby hospital carved a spiral into the wall with the 4th stand before dying of a brain hemorrhage. He'd never been near the dig site, but Owen recognized him. He was the farmer who had leased the land to the excavation company. He'd warned them, You dig too deep, it said, and you'll hear what sleeps beneath. They thought he was being poetic. He wasn't. Transmission Amelia was the first. To decode the sound, she had been recording the static that now plagued every digital device from radios to microwaves. There was a pattern to the noise, she insisted, a rhythmic loop, almost musical. She fed it into software that measured frequencies. Amplitude and modulation. What emerged made her blood freeze. It wasn't just a signal, it was a voice, slowed down. 3,000 times it revealed a phrase repeated over and over again. You see what you cannot unsee. You hear what was never yours to hear. Owen played the audio once. He collapsed with a migraine that lasted 5 hours. When he came to, he told her he had seen something in his mind. Not a vision, not a hallucination, a place. A dark corridor of endless stairs, walls lined with eyes that blinked backward, and a pulsing red glow in the ceiling that was not the sun. Nor a light, but a gaping wound in the sky. He said it had a name, but every time he tried to say it out loud, blood trickled from his gums. The spiral sickness Amelia ran tests on herself, brain scans, heart rate monitors, blood pressure. Everything was changing. Her heart now beat slightly out of sync, not a rhythmic harmonic. In tune with the same pulse from the spiral door, her dreams grew more vivid. She began speaking in the same alien language in her sleep. Owen recorded it, then played it back. She vomited blood the moment she heard her own voice. The spiral on her back had begun to flake like skin shedding. Beneath it, a second mark revealed itself. Not circular this time, a doorway. The visitors that night, someone or something returned to the motel. Owen awoke to see Amelia standing in the hallway, staring at the front door. Her eyes were wide, unblinking, pupils dilated like someone in a trance. Then came the knock. 3 slow knocks. He pulled her back, locked the door, peered through the P. Oh, no one was there, but the hallway light flickered, and then just 4. A moment there was movement, a shape at the edge of vision, tall, angular, like a figure made of shadows folded into themselves. No face, no features, just a shifting mass wrapped in the suggestion of limbs. Then it was gone. But the stone was there, again, bigger this time, still warm. The spiral broadcast back at the dig site. Things had worsened. Aerial satellites picked up a faint signal emanating from the ground, not radio, not sonar, something else. The pattern pulsed in intervals like Morse code from another dimension. Several engineers analyzing the signal went missing. One sent a final message to his supervisor that simply read, "It's not a signal, it's an invitation." The government declared a containment zone. No one was allowed within 50 miles of Darrow's field. But it was too late. The spiral had already seeded itself into minds, into screens, into thought. Amelia's change. Amelia no longer slept. She no longer blinked. Her voice, when she spoke, carried an echo that didn't belong in her throat, a harmonic overtone. Unnatural, like the earth speaking through her. "I remember now," she told Owen one morning, tracing the spiral on her own skin. "Remember what?" "The first time, the before. The thing we called the Watcher, the Keeper. The one who buried itself. To escape what came from above?" Owen stared at her, heart pounding. "You're not making sense." She smiled, sad and serene. "It's not me that doesn't make sense. It's the world we thought we knew." She placed a hand on his chest. "Changing too. You'll see soon." The spiral is a gate. That evening, Owen received an encrypted message from one of the remaining crew members. It contained video footage. Recent. Taken at the dig site by an unauthorized drone. The cube was gone. In its place, a massive spiral-shaped pit spiraling inward. Deeper than the camera could see. A new structure had emerged. Not built. Grown, it resembled a temple or an altar. Made from the same dark material, but now, breathing, pulsing, alive. Message had only one line. "We didn't dig it up. It dug its way out." The world hadn't noticed yet. Outside their motel room, Life continued as normal. Cars passed, radios played shallow pop songs, and televisions cycled through sitcom reruns. But Owen felt the weight of reality shifting beneath all of it, like the skin of the earth stretching over something massive that was slowly waking. He watched Amelia sleep, or at least pretend to. Her breathing was too slow, too deliberate. She hadn't eaten in 2 days. Her skin had turned almost translucent. Veins darkened to the color of obsidian. The spiral on her back now moved slightly under her skin, as if it were alive. He didn't know if she was still human, not entirely. And deep down, he feared he wasn't either. Broadcasts from the hollow that morning, his phone came alive for the first time in days. A single notification. An unsent draft message written in his own notes app. He hadn't typed it. There are no more depths. The spiral goes inward, not downward. It leads to the hollow where the first dream still burns. He stared at the words for a long time, heart hammering. Then the screen cracked spontaneously down the center. No impact. No pressure. Just dash broken. He looked up and realized Amelia was standing by the window, fixed on something in the sky. "It's getting closer," she whispered. "What is—" Shh. She turned, and her eyes reflected a dim red glow. The thing that heard us dig returned to the side toe and told himself it was for closure, that he needed answers, not closure. That he wasn't just sleepwalking toward a truth his mind couldn't yet comprehend. Whatever the reason, they drove back. The roads warped as they approached Darrow's field. Not physically, but perceptually. Distances collapsed. Shapes in. The corners of their vision twisted like limbs reaching through glass. Birds flew backward. Trees leaned away from the site as if repelled by gravity in reverse. By the time they reached the outer perimeter, the air smelled electric. Wrong. The field had changed. It was no longer a trench. It was a mouth. That spiral opens the once stairwell. Had widened into a massive pit spiraling downward in impossible geometry. The edges didn't follow Euclidean space. A line drawn across it would never find its end. The cube was gone. In its place, massive walls of stone that weren't carved, but groaned with veins that glowed faintly red and throbbed in sync. With their own pulses, they weren't alone. Figures stood around the pit, motionless. Former crew members, locals, a few in military gear, eyes black. Faces slacked, all marked with spirals. Owen wanted to flee, but Amelia placed a hand on his chest. "They're not dead. They're listening." To what? To what's coming through. The vision the pit spoke, not in words but sensation. The closer Owen got, the more he felt his mind unfold. Like a flower opening to something ancient, something that had always been there, waiting, feeding. He fell to his knees. It surged through his bones. His thoughts were no longer private. Memories flickered like film reels. He saw childhood, pain, love, regret, all devoured by a single thought, not his own. You found the gate. The lock was never meant to break. The spiral is not a path. It's a scream made solid. Then he saw it, something beneath the spiral. No form, it's pressure. Gravity shaped like a thought, vast and coiled. Older than stars. Watching from inside reality like an eye behind a mirror, and then Nit blinked. Owen screamed until blood poured. From his ears, Amelia descends when he came to. Amelia was already walking down the spiral. Ramp calm, barefoot. Her feet left glowing prints that faded slowly behind her. The figures parted four. They bowed. Owen tried to move, couldn't. The weight of what he'd seen anchored him. Only when her figure began to fade into the black spiral did he crawl forward. "Amelia," he shouted, his voice raw. She turned once and smiled, but it wasn't a smile of comfort. It was one of surrender. Inside the spiral, he followed. Down, down, past where light should go. Past heat, past time. The spiral did not descend, it inverted. The deeper he walked, the less he remembered what direction was. Reality thinned. Walls pulsed with heartbeats that weren't his own. Symbols danced across them, not engraved, but moving. spirals made of other spirals. He began to forget language. First verbs, then nouns, then his name, then Amelia. He remembered only the sound, not what it meant. The hollow god dot the center of. The spiral lay a void, not black, not absence, but too much presence. A point where existence overflowed and became other. In it hovered the shape that had once been the cube it had. Grown, changed. It was no longer solid. It was awake, a shape with a heartbeat, a form that pulsed between dimensions. Owen felt it look. At him not with malice, not with purpose, with curiosity.
The way a child stares at a spinning top or an ant caught in honey. He understood then. They hadn't found it. It had drawn them. The digging was not accidental. The spiral was a lure. And
they had answered. Owen no longer knew how long he had been inside the spiral. Time wasn't gone. It was simply irrelevant. The deeper he descended, the more his sense of before and after collapsed into a single, suffocating now. There were no clocks, no days or nights. Just that constant heartbeat pulsing through the walls of the void. Not his own, but the spiral's. The hollow god. He didn't know how else to name it. It didn't offer a name. It didn't offer anything. It simply was, and he was becoming a part of it. The eyes of the others, he wasn't alone. Figures moved in the spiral's lower chambers, humanoid shapes, stripped of faces. Not skinless, but featureless, pale and smooth, like wax that had never been sculpted. They turned to him when he passed, though they had no eyes. They moved in loops, walking the spiral's curves again and again, like they were bound to it by purpose or punishment. Owen couldn't tell, but he recognized something in them, a limp that belonged to Brantley, the narrow shoulders of Ilya, the twitch of a head that once belonged to Agent Crow. Their bodies were here, but their minds gone, or perhaps consumed. The spiral speaks again. No mouth spoke, no voice echoed, but thought bled into Owen's skull like warm mercury. It gave us access. You were the key made flesh. The spiral on your bones is older than your kind. It is inheritance. He collapsed. Blood poured from his nose. His teeth ached new, ones growing beneath the old. His skin itched where the spiral had once been a symbol. Now it had become a wound. A channel through it, something whispered from the other side. He saw visions, not memories, but prophecies backwards. A city of glass that cracked as stars fell. A mouth beneath the ocean that swallowed a continent. An eclipse that stayed in the sky for 1,000 years, watched by spiraled eyes. And then he saw Amelia. Amelia ascend. She stood at the spiral's center, untouched. UNBENT, changed. Her body glowed, faintly lines of ancient symbols running like blood vessels beneath translucent skin. The spiral on her back now extended outward, projecting into the void like a living conduit. She didn't look at him, not right away. Instead, she faced the hollow god, the living humming mass at the spiral's heart. The black shape twisted in on itself, folding through dimensions Owen couldn't name. It pulsed once, and part of it touched her. A beam, a tether, thought. She didn't flinch. She smiled. I remember now. She said not to him, but to it. I was part of you before the first star screamed. Owen wept. The memory of before something surged in his mind. Not knowledge - recognition, of the spiral, of the purpose, of a world before his own, when language had not yet been born. But symbols ruled thought. The spiral wasn't a message, it was a door, and humanity, in its arrogance, had cracked it open, mistaking age for ruin. The pit was never a grave. It was a lock, a containment zone, and they had unsealed it. The invitation spreads above the earth. Satellites blinked out. Radio telescopes captured a sound, a frequency now detected worldwide. From beneath the Mariana Trench, from deep in the Sahara, from inside Icelandic volcanic tubes, all the same pulse, all the same phrase, now deciphered in broken linguistics. We were sealed beneath your world to protect you from what we were becoming. Governments panicked. Some denied it. Others began rituals they didn't understand, spiral-based alignments and sacrifices older than written myth. In remote villages, entire populations vanished. In some cities, people awoke with spiral-shaped pupils and spoke words that made glass break and dogs howl. But at the pit, in the spiral's core, none of that mattered, because something was crawling upward now. The cracking of Owen, he couldn't move anymore. His knees had fused into the spiral floor. His fingers cracked backward, reforming into branching glyphs. His voice, when he tried to scream, only emitted static. But he could still see Amelia, still see the hollow god, wrapping itself through her spine like smoke through a candle flame. She turned, finally, and looked at him. Her eyes were galaxies now. Her mouth moved, but the words came from inside Owen's own mind. "You were not meant to see this," she whispered. "But the spiral chose you, because you never believed it was just earth and stone. You saw the pulse, the hunger beneath silence." He trembled. "What is it?" he managed to ask, barely forming the words with what was left of his jaw. Amelia smiled with such gentle sorrow. "It's what comes after us. It's what waits when reality burns out." The spiral opens wider. There was no longer a cube. No longer a pit, only the opening, and from it, limbs too vast to comprehend began to emerge, curved and clawed, yet shaped like thought and shadow. It wasn't a monster. It wasn't a god. It was what was locked away, so the universe could be born. Now it remembered, and they called it the spiral bloom. That's what reporters named the red glowing swirl that appeared above the Darrow dig Satan, impossible structure in the sky, spinning like a hurricane, visible even in daylight.
Ow.
But it wasn't made of clouds, or fire, or radiation. It was made of absence. Satellites couldn't see it. Planes refused to fly near it. The air traffic controllers in nearby counties reported audio disturbances whenever pilots asked about the Bloom voices whispering coordinates. That didn't exist. Entire aviation maps had to be redrawn, and yet it remained stationary, watching, waiting. Owen saw it from inside the spiral's core. Even deep underground, the hollow god pointed upward, and so did Amelia. She had become something else entirely. Now no longer host. No longer scientist. She was a mouthpiece. The spiral tongue Amelia now spoke in syllables that bent the walls, words that cracked stone. When she said his name, Moen, it echoed in memories he hadn't lived. He saw flashes of things he was never part of. Primordial beings carving glyphs into the ocean floor, shadows offering stone spirals to the stars. A procession of human figures walking backward into a spiral-shaped temple as their skins peeled. Off like clothing, she touched his face. He was crying again, but the tears ran upward. Defying gravity, like the spiral was beginning to pull not just his body, but the rules. The ruptures begin across the globe. Ruptures appeared tears in space-time, shaped like eyes, like doors, like spirals, etched in flesh. In Tokyo, buildings twisted inward without collapsing. In the Amazon, trees began growing upside down. In Rome, Vatican officials locked themselves inside the catacombs, whispering about ancient warnings hidden in books the church never released, and people changed. Some wept spirals in their blood. Others forgot how to speak, and instead drew intricate glyphs they could not understand. A select few vanished entirely, taken in their sleep, leaving behind only burn marks in the shape of perfect circles carved into their pillows. The spiral had reached critical mass. Darrow becomes the axis back at Darrow's field. The land had caved inward into a yawning abyss. But the deeper the spiral got, the taller the sky became. Time and height reversed. Owen could now see the sky stretch upward like a tunnel, stars rearranging themselves into spiral formations that pulsed like neurons firing. Constellations were reconfiguring, and inside the pit, the hollow god pulsed brighter. From its heart extended a massive arm, more perhaps. A thought in the shape of a limb coiling like smoke around Amelia's waist. She did not resist. She welcomed it. She opened her mouth wide, and from it came a second voice, low, trembling, ageless. We were locked inside the spiral when your kind first learned to crawl. Now, you've scratched through the walls. And so we will teach you what crawls in return. Owen's fracture. Owen tried to run, but the spiral was no longer bound by physical space. Every step brought him closer to the center. He screamed, "Laud!" at the walls, tried to bite through his own tongue to stay human. But it was too late. His shadow no longer matched his body. His heartbeat no longer beat alone. A second pulse had emerged, echoing his, louder, faster. It wasn't in his chest. It was in his skull. And it was Dot laughing the tower. Beneath earth at the spiral's true chord, deeper than all stone, beneath tectonic plates and crust and myth stood a tower, not built, remembered it. Was constructed of thoughts unspoken and stone unrecalled. Symbols flowed up its walls like vines, shifting endlessly, never repeating. This was the spiral's source. The lock humanity had chipped away. Owen now stood before its gates. Alone, except Dot. He wasn't alone. Figures began to crawl down its walls. Thin, humanoid. Wrong. Their heads were backward. Their knees bent wrong. Their eyes were mouths, and their mouths repeated a phrase in perfect unison. "Welcome back," howled the spiral. "You never left. You simply forgot." Owen collapsed to his knees. He began to remember. Amelia's transformation. Amelia floated now between the hollow God and the spiral tower. She was no longer flesh and blood. She was a bridge. 1 foot an hour. World 1 foot in the first world, the place where the spiral had been born. Before time, before matter. A plane where identity bent around sound and gods were not worshipped, but locked away in self-dashed defense. Amelia turned slowly toward Owen. Her voice was hers again, fragile, mortal. "Do you understand it now?" she asked. He nodded, tears falling upward again. "It wasn't meant for us," she whispered. "What?" "But we were always meant for it." The spiral's hunger, the hollow god fully unfurled now, no longer hiding beneath matter. Its tendrils reached across space, threading through Earth's magnetic field like roots through soil. The spiral bloom in the sky expanded, devouring stars. Pulling time backward in bursts, people who stared at it too long began aging in reverse, then forward, then folding inward. Mothers forgot their children's names. Lovers died and re-met and died again. Entire cities entered dream loops. They repeated the same hour eternally, until the spiral erased the hour entirely. Humanity had become a thought, and the spiral is beginning to rewrite it. The final invitation, the spiral tower began to open. Inside, light poured backward. Not illumination, but remembered darkness. Owen stood at the threshold behind him. Earth as he knew it folded into a question. Before him, the spiral whispered one last offer. Return, and forget all this. Seal the spiral. Don't. But the cost is everything. You are. You will no longer be human. You will no longer be real. But you will contain it. Again, forever. Owen looked at Amelia. She nodded. She had already chosen. Owen had never felt peace. Now it was his turn. Not really. But standing before the open spiral tower. With the hollow god's presence stretching through his every vein, he realized something terrible. This was peace. A final stillness. Not because everything was. But because everything was ending. Behind him, Earth rippled. Reality shivered. And inside his chest, the spiral mark glowed like a furnace. "You were always the lock," whispered Amelia. "We just needed to dig deep enough to find you." Looked at her, no longer truly Amelia, but not lost either. Her eyes shimmered like water, remembering how to burn. "What happens if I step inside?" he asked. "You don't step in," she said gently. "You're pulled through." The tower of memory, the spiral tower's walls, moved like breathing. Stone. Each step Owen took into its depths made his skin grow colder, more distant. With every heartbeat he forgot something, his parents' voices, the warmth of coffee in winter, the sound of wind on glass. He wasn't dying. He was being unwritten. Memories. Sloughed off like ash, language crumbled in his throat. At the center of the tower, there was no floor, only a void that spun in silence. Amelia joined him. She knelt beside the spiral's center and pressed her hands into the air itself. It rippled, opening like liquid light. No, you still have a choice. She said, you can let it take the world, ... Or you can become the container. I'll lose myself. Yes, and you. I'm already gone. She smiled. Not mournfully, but with relief. Above, Earth breaks from orbit. Astronauts on the International Space Station sent a final message. The sky has opened. There is no curvature anymore. The Earth is curling inward, watching continents spiral like ink in water. Africa just vanished. Then static. Then silence. In Rome, the Vatican burst into flames without combustion. It simply ceased its place in space, folded like a page turned inward in New York. A building collapsed backward through time, showing all its past forms as it unbuilt itself and then reassembled as a spiral spire made of salt. All over the globe, people began drawing the spiral compulsively, in ash, in blood, in sand and thought. They weren't worshiping. They were remembering. The spiral's final question inside the tower. The hollow god appeared not in flesh, but in presence. A weight. A concept that wrapped around Owen's bones like gravity, with a voice, and that voice, low and eternal, offered one last question. Are you ready to stop being one? So that all can continue? He thought of the dig, of Jacob screaming, of Amelia's back, glowing under floodlights, of Brantley's death, of the whispers, of the cube, of the first hum, of how it had all started with a simple hole in the ground. He breathed in, he breathed out. Yes. Containment ritual. Amelia extended her arms. Symbols etched in the void spun around her like fireflies made of code. Each carried weight, meaning, cost. The spiral began folding again, inward. Owen stepped into the center. He did not scream. He did not burn. He stopped existing, but only as a Doan. He became the spiral lock across the world. Things stopped unraveling. The spiral bloom collapsed inward in a silent flash that no human eye could see. The hollow god retreated not in fear, but in compliance. The spiral tower folded in on itself, sealing the pit at Darrow's field beneath. Miles of fresh Earth reality snapped back into shape. Time resumed. Space rethreaded. Oceans forgot their memories. Skies forgot their hunger. Minds stitched themselves back together, and Owen. He was gone, but something remained. The world after weeks passed. Darrow's field was declared a geological collapse, sinkhole. The government issued a firm denial, but locals still whisper. Cows still avoid the land. Birds won't fly over it. Devices go dead near the trench. Children draw spirals they've never seen, and sometimes, when the air is still, you can hear humming beneath the ground. A single, steady beat, like a heartbeat. Amelia's return 1 year later, a woman arrived at Darrow's edge. No ID, no record eyes. Like shimmering glass, skin pale, glowing faintly in moonlight, she knelt and placed her hand on the dirt, smiled. You held, she whispered. Then she stood and vanished into the fog. The spiral isn't Ganit's sleeping held in place, contained in the hollowed soul of a man who once asked, what's buried under all this rock? But one day, the spiral may awaken again, and when it does, it won't wait to be dug up. It will dig its way out. It's been 13 years since the spiral incident. That's what they call it now, an incident. Buried in redacted government reports, wrapped in false geological studies, but stitched into the internet's conspiracy corners where no one with a rational mind dares to look. Darrow's field has no name on the map anymore. Satellite images blur the land. All cell signals die within 10 miles. They say it's nothing, but the world knows, even if it doesn't remember. Why? Because something changed, and some people, sensitive ones, strange ones, still feel it humming beneath their feet when the night is quiet. The boy who dreamed of spirals in a small town far from Darrow, a 7-year-old boy named Ellis, began drawing spirals on his bedroom wall. Not simple ones. They were fractal, endless tight. He drew them in ink, then chalk, then his own blood. When his mother took his pencils away, the spirals always started as circles, but they never closed. They reached outward, growing like vines across his room. Every time his parents repainted, the lines reappeared. By morning, when asked why, Ellis only said, "I'm helping it remember the door." Residual echoes around the world, strange symptoms began re-emerging. In Germany, a retired radio technician rebuilt a transmitter that began broadcasting a single, tone-deep, low, impossible to block. In South Africa, miners unearthed a smooth, black stone with pulsing veins. It exploded into dust the moment light touched it. In Chile, astronomers observed a section of space where stars swirled inward for no reason. Spiral-shaped void had appeared. And it was growing. The reports were hidden, silenced, discredited, but the pattern was undeniable. The spiral wasn't finished. It was simply waiting. Amelia, in the dreamscape Amidas. When the world is asleep, people dream of a woman with glassy eyes and soft whispering hands. She walks through their memories, touching photos, rearranging emotions, asking only one question. Do you remember Owen? No one does. Not really. But they wake with a taste of metal in their mouths. For the rest of the day, their shadows twitch slightly out of sync. Inside the spiral, core beneath Darrow's field, far below the sealed surface and hidden from every sensor and scan, the spiral core still turns. It is not a cube anymore, not a tower, not a pit. It is a memory engine. And within it, something stirs. Not screaming, not struggling, just watching, waiting, held in place by the thing. That used to be a man named Owen Henderson. His name is not spoken here, but it pulses through the core. He is the wall, the seal, the final barrier. But even locks can wear down. Even gates given enough time can creak open. The spiral lock weakens year by year. Right. The spiral presses. Inward it sings in the frequencies of tectonic vibrations. It hums in the ears of those with certain bloodlines, and it listens to every prayer, every scream, every silence, because somewhere, in the deepest corner of the spiral core, Owen still exists, not as a man, not as a thought, but as structure, and something someone's knocking on his mind. Let me through, it whispers. Just a little. They've forgotten now. It's time to remind them. The spiral tightens. Owen holds the line. But he is tired. The final breach. One winter morning. Seismic readings spike around Darrow. Sensors melt. Birds fall from the sky mid-dash flight. At 3:33 a.m., spiral of red light pierces the clouds above the buried site. People 800 miles away dream of an eye that doesn't blink. In a broadcast studio in London, all channels momentarily switch to a single frame. Owen's face, pale and trembling. Behind him, spirals burning in the sky. His mouth opens. But the sound is not human. It's the spiral voice, low, rhythmic, ancient. And it says only, one was never enough. The last message Amelia writes again. Not in ink, not on paper, but in the mind of a girl falling asleep beside the sea, she plants a vision. Owen's hands reaching out across a burning sky, trying to pull the spiral closed again. Failing, the girl wakes up sobbing. When her mother asks what's wrong, she says, "The spiral cracked." What spiral, honey? The one inside the ground? The one that used to dream with us. The end. Or the beginning. Again, the spiral is a cycle. A return. A door with no sides. What was buried has been remembered. What was sealed has whispered. Its way back into the hearts of the living. The spiral doesn't need to be dug up again. It has already seated itself in every dreaming mind. And when the world next closes its eyes, it won't be waking up alone.